moving along to 6.01, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular work session Board of Education meeting held on Monday, June 9th, 2025?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or changes? All right, will you please take the vote?
Mrs. Levan,
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine,
Yes.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Mr. Heckelman,
Abstain.
Mrs. Meyer.
Yes. Moving along to financials, 7.01, may I have a motion to approve the financial report and investments for May 2025?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Marshall, will you talk to us about this, please?
Yes, thank you, President Meyer, members of the board. So this is our May month-end financial report. So this is the second to the last month of the fiscal year. Our fiscal year ends June 30th. For the general fund, we had year-to-date receipts of $244.9 million. I do want to remind everybody that $30 million of that includes the transfers back of that fund balance. So really our year-to-date revenues are right around $215 million. And year-to-date expenses, so far as of the end of May, for the general fund, we were at $210.9 million, and we ended with an unencumbered fund balance of $189.8 million. Just a reminder, our annual budget is around $230 million on that. And then for all funds, we had year-to-date receipts of $316.3 million, again inflated by that $30 million. And then year-to-date expenditures for all funds of $323.9 million. And we ended with an unencumbered fund balance for all funds of $222 million. And that was for the month of May.
Any questions? Okay, would you take the vote, please?
Mrs. Ottman,
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine,
Yes.
Mr. Heckelman,
Yes.
Mrs. Levan,
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer.
Yes. And may I have a motion to approve the purchases in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 5705.41D1 and Board Policy 6320?
So moved.
Second.
And Ms. Marshall, will you talk to us about this too?
Yes, thank you again. So these are what we call then and now purchase orders. This is where we have a purchase order that's dated after an invoice date, and anything in excess of $3,000 must be approved by the board before we can pay it. In these cases, we have two purchase orders that were from our communications department. We actually had purchase orders open for both of these, but they were closed prior to the invoices being paid in full for these services. So the money has been budgeted. It was actually in a purchase order at one time. We just had to open a new purchase order because the old ones were closed. And I would recommend board approval so we can get these paid timely.
Thank you. All right. Any questions?
I keep thinking someone's trying to talk whenever
Yeah.
it does that. Great. Mrs. Levan,
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine,
Yes.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Mr. Heckelman,
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer.
Yes. And may I have a motion to approve the resolution for the final appropriations for all funds for school year 2024 and 2025, fiscal year 2025?
Second.
Can you talk to us about this, Ms. Marshall?
Yes, so we are at fiscal year end. We have these in the last meeting of the year, the last meeting in June every year. So these are our final appropriations. We are aligning everything with expenditures and also updating with the forecast updates that we did to include the transfers. That's why you see that large increase in the general fund. That is for the transfers to transfer that fund balance as we discussed at the last work session. Just a reminder about that.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Just take the vote.
Mrs. Ottman,
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine,
Yes.
Mr. Heckelman,
Yes.
Mrs. Levan,
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer.
Yes. And may I have a motion to approve the resolution for temporary appropriations for all funds for the school year 2025-2026, fiscal year 2026?
So moved.
Second.
Will you talk to us about this, Ms. Marshall?
Yes, so also every June, we have to have appropriations in place for us to get started with our fiscal year. that starts July 1st. So these are our temporary appropriations. We will bring permanents back before the end of September, as required by law. So this is for us to get started with the year.
Thank you. Any questions? All right.
Mrs. Valentine,
Yes.
Mrs. Levan,
Yes.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Mr. Heckelman,
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer.
Yes. And may I have a motion to approve the resolution establishing a capital projects and termination benefits fund, authorizing transfers to both funds for the general from the general fund?
So moved.
Second.
And will you talk to us about this? I know we talked about it last time, but just remind us.
So this is that resolution that we discussed at the last board meeting during the work session portion. So this will allow us to establish two funds, the Capital Projects Fund and the Termination Benefits Fund. Termination benefits is just a term that's used for, we have required severance payments under Ohio law and collective bargaining agreements and board policies. And so this will allow us to move fund balance from the general fund to that fund and then start paying those expenses out of that fund. And then for capital projects, we have a list of things. It's actually an attachment to the bottom of that resolution. You can see there the schedule for things that we generally pay out of the general fund that would be considered capital projects in terms of accounting for fixed assets, the acquisition of fixed assets for capital projects. And so we are transferring a portion of our general fund cash balance out of our general fund into the 070 fund, and then we will start paying those expenses out of that. And it's really just a change in how we are accounting for the dollars that we have on hand. There's been a lot of conversation around cash balances and a lot of recommendations from lawmakers around the state saying that if we have intended uses for those funds, we should be transferring those into the appropriate fund to account for that. And so that's what we're doing here. Not that what we were doing wasn't accounting for it, but just so that it's clear that we are accounting for it in those separate funds to move forward. So we are transferring approximately $40.6 million to the Capital Projects Fund, and that's just out of the general fund's cash balance, and then about $6.6 million to the Termination Benefits Fund, and the amounts are listed there in the resolutions. But it's the same numbers that we had talked about at the last work session on the worksheet that I gave you, so there weren't any changes to that.
And just so I know, I don't think everybody can see this, but some of those things that are on the capital improvement that you're talking about are things like curriculum and equipment and textbooks, just to give you an idea of what that's for. So,
Yeah, and everybody should be able to see that. It's at the end of the resolution that's on the agenda. If they pull up the agenda, they should be able to see that.
And I think one of the biggest items just to point out is technology,
Technology
which obviously
is a
the
big
size of
piece.
district, we're constantly replacing machines and infrastructure and equipment. So that'll be one that, again, is just a re-accounting of how we're spending that.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure it's very clear. This transfer does not affect the amount or timing for any levy requests that the district would need. Our needs remain the same, whether we account for this in the general fund or we account for it in the capital projects and termination benefits fund. There's no change with that.
thank you for that clarification. Any other?
I was going to ask if you wouldn't mind explaining what that termination benefits fund is, because it sounds like we're giving people a bunch of money when
does.
they're terminated.
Right. So under Ohio law, there are specific requirements for paying out vacation payments and sick leave through severance payments for retirees and people who leave the district. There's also the allowance for an irregular pay cycle. So we are on 26 pays because of the way the calendar works. Every 10 years or so, we have a 27th pay, and we adjust contract pays for that to account for that. But every 10 years, we have an extra pay period in the fiscal year. We're not expecting a 27th pay in the fiscal year until around 2033, so that's not included in this. But what we're looking at is what do we currently pay on average per year for those severance payments as required by law and collective bargaining. And so we've averaged that for the next 5 years, and that's the amount that we're transferring into the termination benefits fund.
Great, thank you.
Doesn't look like there's any other questions.
Mrs. Valentine,
Yes.
Mrs. Levan,
Yes.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Mr. Heckelman,
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer.
Yes. And may I have a motion to approve the transfer of funds as presented?
So moved. Second.
Sorry, Ms. Marshall, will you talk to us about this?
Yes, thank you again. So this is, in addition to the transfers from the last resolution, we also have an annual transfer that we do to the food service fund. The food service fund is considered a federal fund, and so it cannot hold negative lunch debt. So this will be moved into the general fund. The general fund will hold that debt, and all of the negative lunch balances will be assessed in Power School for families to be able to pay it through Power School into the next year. So the total amount is $73,574.84. And as I said before, because the food service fund can't hold negative debt, that's why we do this transfer.
Thank you.
Can you just, I guess, enlighten me on when the food service balance goes back to the general fund? If families can't pay, is there a way for them to apply for assistance, or does that fee just sit in Power School, and what happens if they don't pay it?
We do work with families on payment plans and things like that, and sometimes we have donors that help cover some some fees for families.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah, we've had quite a few donors
We've
over
had
the
a lot
years,
of donors.
which we're
Yeah.
very thankful for. Okay. Any other questions?
Mrs. Levan?
Yeah.
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Mr. Heckelman?
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes, and moving along, 7.07, fund, to fund advances. May I have a motion to approve the fund-to-fund advances?
So moved.
Second.
Will you talk to us about this?
Yeah, it's busy time for me because it's
Yeah.
the end of the year. So that's why we have so much stuff. So again, we do this every year. We have federal and state grants that are accounted for in other funds that operate on a reimbursable basis. That means we're waiting on reimbursements to come in for expenditures that have already been made. And so these advances are being done to cover those funds because we can't have a negative fund balance at the end of a fiscal year. And so these advances will cover the fund balance to make it whole. And then once those revenues are received from the state, whether it's federal or state grants, it all comes through the state. Once those are received, we'll advance the money back to the general fund to repay the general fund. So it's just a timing piece.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Could you just kind of distinguish for us the difference between the Idea B and Idea B preschool?
So Idea B is just the regular Idea B. So it's for special education. It's an entitlement grant for special education through the federal government. And then the preschool is the same thing, but specific for preschool because K-12 is accounted for separately from preschool. Yeah, great question.
Okay.
Mrs. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. Levan?
Yes.
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Mr. Heckelman?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes. And may I have a motion to approve the resolution requesting certification of alternative tax rates for an income tax of 0.75%, 3/4 of a quarter?
So moved. Second.
Will you remind us, I know we talked about this last time, but remind us, because we're also going to do one next on 1.25, so can you just talk to us a little bit about this?
Yes. So we, as we discussed at the last work session, we're asking the Department of Taxation to certify the rates. I'm estimating a 0.75 rate, but the amount being requested is it's for an earned income tax, and it would generate $24,297,281. So that's what we're requesting the certification for. So this would be essentially 0.75%. And when we're talking about earned income, we're talking about the Ohio Modified Adjusted Gross Income as it relates to W-2 wages and net self-employment tax. And we have discussed the needs based on what we're looking at with the forecast and updated projections and all of that. So this would keep us essentially in a good spot to maintain what we have moving forward, and likely not need to come back to the voters until around calendar year 2029, assuming that the estimates are accurate, state funding doesn't take a nosedive, and they don't completely claw back everything that we, like, assuming property taxes still look the way they do and all of those things, right? Lots of things up in the air right now, so this could definitely change moving forward. I want to make that clear. So that's based on our current need. As you know, we were on the ballot last year for a property tax levy. The thing with income taxes is there's about an 18-month window before the district will see full collections with a property tax levy. So that's a significant amount.
With an income tax levy.
Or an income tax levy, thank you. But that's a significant amount of time versus a property tax levy. We would see a half year in the first fiscal year and then a full year in the next fiscal year. So this accounts for all of that. There's also, you know, an income tax is subject to the economy, the ebb and flow of what the economy does in this space. And I do want to mention, when we were here earlier in the month, we had old amounts from the Department of Taxation. They updated those tables last week. So even the 0.75%, what originally their estimates were at 26.5%, 26.5 million is now at 24.3 million. So it's a huge swing with those estimates down from where we were before. So I'm still suggesting to maintain where we are. We would be at that 0.75%. We do have a second resolution after this one that I think that the board should consider should the House Bill 335 and all of the conversation around property tax reform, should the state eliminate inside millage. For Westerville schools, our inside millage amount is 3.8 mils, and it generates about $16.3 million a year. And so that is the difference in revenue between a 0.75 and a 1.25% earned income tax levy for our district. And so that's why we have both resolutions on here.
Nicole,
And-
just to clarify, we have to have it in 0.25% increments.
Yes, it has to be in 0.25% increments. And we have to file with, it has the same filing deadlines as a property tax levy as far as getting it on the ballot with the Board of Elections. So we would need to come back in July and do a resolution to proceed. And I think we're looking at a July 21st date if all of the board members are available for that, to have a special meeting. We would have to have a special meeting. And I do just want to mention, I made a note here, when we talk about 0.75%, if we have a modified adjusted gross income of $50,000, it's about $375 the tax would be. So just so you're aware of how that works. 100,000 would be $750. So our federal adjusted gross median, according to our payment reports from 2022, was the latest number that I have, was $59,789. So the federal AGI is essentially the start before you have like adds and subtracts from the modified adjusted gross. And so just using that as an estimate, a 0.75 would be about $448, and a 1.25% would be about $747 tax. If you understand what that impact might be for someone.
Thank you for reminding us of why we have two separate ones on here too. We really, like as you said, we don't know which way the budget bill is going to go. If they'll roll House Bill 335 into the budget bill, it's what they signaled in their press statement. So we have two on here, but when we come back, we'll only move forward with one.
Yes.
But this is an investment in our like our school district, which is really an investment in our community. And so it's important that we need to go back to the voters, so.
Yeah, and we'll have, as we're, planning in the future and coming back in July, we'll have more specific conversations around what does it mean if this doesn't pass and what would that look like moving forward with the district, so.
Yeah, that will be good conversation to have, for sure. Thank you. Any questions?
Just a point of clarification, this only impacts wage earners who reside in Westerville and would not impact retirement income or anything along those lines, correct?
Yes, so it doesn't apply to retirement income, to interest, dividends, estate, or unemployment taxes, unemployment income.
And it also scales, right, with people's income too,
The percentage.
as you talked about, right? So it's, as we earn more, it may be a little bit more, but as we earn less, or if we go into recession, it'll be less.
And everybody who's within the Westerville City School District boundary would be impacted by this. It's not just the city of Westerville, right?
And it
Okay.
doesn't just impact property owners, it would
It's
impact
everybody.
anybody.
Everybody who earns income.
resides within the school district boundaries,
Mhm.
the entire school district boundaries, and who earns income through, has wages with their W-2 or self-employment for sole proprietorship or partnership.
Okay.
Any other?
I'll just say that, we're at this moment where we don't know if they're gonna get rid of inside mills, right? So,
Yeah, we don't know if they're gonna get inside mills. We're also hearing a lot from lawmakers saying that we can't continue asking our communities for property tax levies, and that we should try to diversify our revenue. And so there have been, more than a couple of lawmakers that have specifically said school districts can ask their community for an income tax, and instead of asking for additional property taxes, they should be asking for income taxes.
Which is literally the only other way we can diversify our revenue. We
Yeah.
can't sell products.
and so, I think if folks are so moved, they should reach out to the legislators and let them know, understand that in the Westerville City School District, you can see right in front of you the difference, right? If inside mills go away, we're gonna have to look at making that up. So we're looking at 1.25, that's why we have both of these on here. So there is a moment here where you can reach out and let people know your feelings.
Yeah, and I do want to just clarify, school district income taxes only apply to people who live in the district, and it doesn't apply to people who might live outside the district but work in Westerville School District, if that makes any sense. So city income taxes are a little bit different, where they tax workers as well as residents, versus school districts, it's just the residents, so.
To be clear, that's not a choice that we made. That's
Right.
just the way it is under
That's
statute.
the way statute works, yeah.
And the difference, just to follow up on the 0.75 versus 1.25, these are both local share, right? So
Yes.
education in Ohio, it's a shared responsibility between the state and the district. So, right now, those inside mills are on property tax. If you prefer that more of that move to income tax, well, you can talk to your legislator about that. So that's the thing here. This is all local share. So inside mills are a little bit complex, but they are property taxation. And if those go away, what we're discussing up here is shifting that burden from property tax, because that vehicle, those inside mills would be not available to us, and moving it on to income tax. So I just want to be clear.
So that's for the difference between the 0.75
Yes.
and the 1.25%, yes.
Has the governor signaled at all his support of, or lack of support for the inside mill? And would that be a route people could take to encourage a line item veto of that if it makes it into the bill?
I think people should always feel empowered to encourage a line item veto and things that they don't support that's in the state budget's proposal. The conference committee, as Angie said earlier, They've had one hearing. They're scheduled to meet again tomorrow for a possible vote and amendment. It doesn't seem like they're having testimony from just from people. They did have the budget director last week and someone from the Legislative Services Commission. And so, yeah, I think that we don't know what that will really look like until that comes out. I will say on the school funding side, none of the proposals have looked great for our district. So I don't anticipate much on the state funding side. We're already severely underfunded where we need to be. Our state share continues to decrease, which means our local share continues to increase. And I don't think that there's an appetite at the state to do that. I will also mention, when we look at a 0.75%, should we not have to go down the inside millage road, part of the Senate's proposal was to reduce the state income tax by 0.75% in the second year of the biennium. So it would be a net wash in that case.
I think it's important to note too, and we may have spoken about this last meeting, but when we talk about the inside millage potentially going away, that doesn't only impact our school district, but other local services. So just, if you've not been really familiar with that conversation, would encourage you to really look into that. I mean, we're talking about loss of critical revenue for safety services, cities, villages, et cetera, across the state.
Which
So
we also depend on as a business, as an organization in the local community. So again, it just,
I think also, to my colleague's question, we heard from Chairman Serino, and he basically said, the Senate is about as good as you're going to get, so basically get on board, or it's going to get worse. So I don't expect to see a lot better, considering those statements and those comments, and we know that Speaker Huffman is very much, we know where he stands. So, but I would reiterate my colleagues' comments about contacting your legislators, but contacting, the people on the conference committee and the governor, and then really expressing, what you'd like to see in this budget that's coming forward. Public education is the foundation of our healthy communities, and we wouldn't be back here if we didn't feel it necessary, and regardless of where it ends, we need to invest in our system, which is really an investment in our community, in all of us. Anything else?
Oh, sorry. From your understanding, Nicole, the cutting of the public education funds is a choice. They are choosing to still continue to invest at or above levels from last biennium for private education, correct? Correct, okay. And we're still planning on, as far as I know, somebody correct me, giving $600 million away to a football stadium, correct?
Yes, they're using unclaimed funds for financing the football stadium.
Which is still money out of our pockets going to a football stadium that a millionaire
Under
could
the
probably
Senate's version,
afford.
yeah.
Yes, okay. Okay, so just wanted to reiterate again that these are choices that our state legislators are making. They're choosing to not invest in our kids in the public education arena. So I think, to your point, Christy, making sure you are calling your legislators, especially when this goes to the governor's desk, making him aware of how we're feeling, because the money has to come from somewhere, and clearly this is why we're at this point with the income tax.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Will you take?
Mrs. Ottman?
Yes.
Mrs. Lehman?
Yes.
Mr. Eckelman?
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes. And may I have a motion to approve the resolution requesting certification of alternative tax rates for an income tax of 1.25%?
Moved.
Second.
Anything else we want to add to?
Just a reminder, the 1.25% is my estimate, and that would generate $40,628,608. Our inside millage generates about $16.3 million annually for operations, and that would be an annual operating loss should inside millage be eliminated, and so that difference is the 16.3 million.
Ms. Marshall, actually, just two quick things about inside mills, just to be clear to people, because it's sort of, you know, the lingo. It's like, these are the unvoted mills, right? That we just carry. And that this is the only portion of our property taxes that's inflationary on value. So in our voted millage, we don't see inflation on that voted in except for when new properties come online.
Right.
But on the inside mills or the unvoted mills, those do actually grow. That small portion grows.
Right.
So I just want to be clear.
Yeah, so
on how it's
inside mills was established by the state constitution, and all jurisdictions overlapping have 10 mills to share. So our portion of that 10 mills is 3.8 mills, and that stays at 3.8 mills based on our value applied. So as values increase, that increases. As values decrease, that decreases. Whereas all of our voted levies are subject to what's known as House Bill 920 that was approved back in the 70s. And so what that does is as values increase, the county reduces tax rates so that the revenue that we receive stays generally the same. But your individual tax bill will shift depending on how much your value changed compared to the average around the county and the school district. So sometimes it's a shifting, but overall what we see in that doesn't really change. So yeah, that's the difference.
Just want people
And
to
that it
be
is unvoted. And that's what the lawmakers are saying is that, residents have never voted for that, and that they shouldn't see inflationary increases on tax revenues, so.
Thanks for clarifying.
Mrs. Ottman?
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Eckelman?
Yes.
Mrs. Lieband?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes, and